I am Bert, K1OIK, and my presentation is about truth in amateur radio. I will be using a note card because I can't remember everything. I'm getting really old, I'm way up there, so I will try and keep up with myself there. But this presentation about the Virtual Ham Radio Expo is made possible by Eric Goff, 4Z1UG. And he describes my presentation, and fairly accurately so, as a humorous commentary about some of the complaints about amateur radio. So it is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and he also points out that one of my earlier videos had about 300,000 views, so it does get around. Now, one thing I really want to make clear, I'm going to try and avoid commenting on any individual person. And I want to make it also clear that hams as a group are generally a pretty high character, basically higher character than most of us, I shouldn't say most of us, most of the general public. What you hear in back of me is called radio RTTY. I shouldn't. And I can decode RTTY. That particular person happens to be from Louisiana that you're hearing, and they're engaging in a radio contest where they give signal reports that generally are almost always the same. You can determine whether they're truthful or not. Now, one of the things that amateur radio goes by, the ARRL is promoting something called the amateur code, that the amateur is considerate. Well, in many cases the amateur is considerate, but there are a few cases where the amateur is not. They also point out the amateur is loyal, and I think they're trying to say the amateur is loyal to the ARRL, but when most people pray, they don't pray to the ARRL, and I would figure most hams don't do that. They also mention out the ham is friendly, and I find that most hams are friendly in most cases. One of the problems I have seen as far as amateur radio operators being balanced, that many are not. On a contest weekend, there are hams that will abandon their family and go on to a contest. I'm not going to make this a contest commentary because I have some very, very negative views on contesting, but that's not what this is going to be about. And they also mentioned that the hams should be patriotic, and I find that most hams are generally very patriotic. Now, I'm not sure I should have worn my yellow vest, because hams that supposedly do public service, which almost none do, they usually go out and they wear a yellow vest. Now, I do have a yellow vest in case it's necessary. I'm not sure if hams, though, are supposed to wear yellow underwear. So, but I got some yellow underwear just in case hams are supposed to wear yellow underwear. Probably one of the biggest complaints I have is when hams say, hi, hi. Now, hi, hi is something that you use on CW because it's fairly short. It's shorter than ha, ha. Ha, ha would be da-da-da-da-da-da, or hi, hi is da-da-da-da-da-da. So saying hi, hi on phone is idiotic. If something is funny, you laugh. Now, some hams even say H-I. They spell it out. On CW, one of the dumbest things I hear is a ham that says KN at the end of a transmission because he wants no breakers. Now, I've been licensed since 1959. I've never had a ham break into one of my CW contacts. Now, I can understand if it's a DX station and you don't want someone breaking in because you're a rare DX station. And speaking of rare DX stations, I kind of wonder why sometimes there's a fellow that calls a rare DX station who's trying to work, people are trying to work him who haven't worked him before, and he gets on there and he starts giving a speech. And then he'll mention how nice it is to see him again and again, where you have all these poor people trying to get in there and make a contact. And another thing I have an issue with is for ID. They'll say, my call is K1OIK for ID. Well, what else are you saying your call for, if not for an ID? And by the way, as you're listening to this, on one of my videos, I people, of course, they do complain, and I say, is there anything I have said that is not based on fact? Now, the video was done in 2008. This is 2022. Not one person yet has actually been able to claim anything I said was not based on fact. Another thing, I mean, I'm doing the glasses on and off here. Well, maybe I should just leave them on. Hams will say, the name here is Fred. Well, does your name change when you go somewhere else? Or they'll say the temperature here. Do you think you're giving the temperature somewhere else? They say the temperature is 70 degrees, and then they'll say Fahrenheit. Well, where in the world is the temperature going to be 70 degrees Celsius? It isn't. It just isn't. Then, of course, the very common thing is hams will say we when they actually mean I. Now, I see that a lot, particularly in sports, when someone's talking about their sports team, we. And then I will always question them and say, are you on the team? Why did you say we? Most hams that say that maybe are lacking self-confidence because they're not willing to say I. You'll see ham radio postcards, QSL cards, and they'll be addressed, if they're mailed, obviously, they'll be addressed to A.R.S. ARS. You think the post office knows what ARS stands for? Then frequently you'll see it in text when people will say Q's. I've had 54 Q's today. Well, first of all, Q's is an abbreviation for QSO, which is an abbreviation for contact. So an abbreviation of an abbreviation, they're just trying to act really cool. Another term hams will use, 72 and I owe you one. Oh, that's so cute. That is just so cute. And I heard a ham the other day, he was saying he was running 300 whiskeys. 300 whiskeys? Well, what he meant was 300 watts. Now, watts is quicker to say, so why did he say whiskeys? This is fairly common. Hams will say the wife, like it's a material thing, like the transmitter and the house. A wife is a human being and is a woman. Just say, my wife. Another term I'll see a lot of times in text when people are writing, they'll say ARL said such and such. It's the ARL said such and such. That would be the proper way. That would be the proper way to put it. There's a microphone manufacturer that makes very nice looking mics. He marks them up very high, but he's probably got about $30 worth of material to sell a $270 mic. And then there are hams that will go on the air and they'll say QSL, 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 QSL. I talked to one guy once and he kept saying QSL, QSL, and I finally said to him, you say that one more time, and I am not going to talk to you any longer. And he didn't. He didn't say QSL. Frequently, instead of saying QSO or QRZ, instead of CQ, let me get that straight, instead of saying CQ, they will say QRZ when no one's calling them. QRZ basically means who is calling me. So I'm not sure why they say that. Bugs, these happen to be devices you send Morse code with. They drive me crazy because the dip to dot ratio sometimes is very difficult for me to copy. Now, I am not very good at CW. I do make a lot of contacts, and I've been doing this for 62 years, but I barely passed the amateur extra code, which is, of course, when they had code, and of course, which is when you actually had to study material from a book, and they didn't give you all the test questions at all. So Morse code was the only skill we hams have. My daughter passed the Technician Plus license when she was 8 years old. And I remember a guy on the air on 10 meters, and he was saying, he was bragging about passing his tech license. And I said, well, you now risen to the level of an 8-year-old. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, my daughter passed it when she was 8. He said, she must have been smart. I said, she was smart, but she was 8. So I think I made that point. Another term hams will say, I'm going to let you go, even if they haven't said they wanted to go anywhere. Well, what if you don't want to? What if the other guy doesn't want? What if you don't want to go? But it's actually they want to go. Another problem we have with DX stations sometimes is they will go for a while and not ID, so you don't, if you happen to tune across them, you don't know who you're talking to, or who they are. Recap, and this is, I get into a lot of arguments on this. I do not recap rigs. I do not recap rigs. Now there's an argument to do it because you don't want to blow up the transformer. But if my car won't start, I don't go working on the tire that might be flat. I fix the main problem first, and then maybe if you have a deal where you want to put in new capacitors, okay. But I don't fix something that is working. AMers, they sometimes will go up and they'll say, "Yay, yay!" when they're testing it. It drives me nuts, and I feel like picking up the microphone and saying, "Yay, yay!" But I guess there must be a reason for that. Then there's Part 97. Part 97 is part of the FCC regulations, and one of the things they require you to, I shouldn't say require, they hope you do, is public service. Most hams do this much public service. 99% do this much public service. But they claim that they need to put up a beam for the public service, but they don't do any public service. And then you have these HROs, which happen to regulate antennas outside, and people, they fight the HRO to put up these ugly monstrosities. Now I happen to like them. I like beam antennas. I like big towers. But my neighbor might not like them, so who am I to impose my will on them? Another thing that Part 97 says, we're supposed to encourage international goodwill. How does 5-9 and good luck in a contest encourage international goodwill? Now, the hams that you're listening to in this radio RTTY event, I'm sure the contacts there are lasting maybe 10 or 15 seconds. I don't know how you do goodwill with that. Hams will say, if they're putting an ad on, for example, on QLZ, they will say, "Thanks for looking." You're not getting a commission for looking. The buyer's not getting, the seller's not getting a commission for looking. I have no clue why they would say that. Hams also, they buy rigs for backup. Backup for what? Ham radio is hardly very important, so what do they need a backup rig? So let's say your main rig dies. Okay, deal with it. Either you can fix it, or since most of them are solid state and have a lot of integrated circuits in them, you do have to send them away. So they may be gone for a couple of weeks. Can you live your life for a couple of weeks without ham radio? Maybe you might want to go see your family and your kids. You think that might want to be possible? You can live a couple of weeks without ham radio. And recently, the ARL has changed some of the field day rules. Now you can't use more than 100 watts. Okay, but sometimes emergencies occur. Field day is, in a sense, supposed to be a preparation for an emergency. So in some emergencies, you want to have some power because you're trying to communicate with the rest of the world. And another thing, assuming you're not, a lot of the rigs, the boat anchor type rigs, or the older rigs, the more ancient rigs, so like a Swan 240 or some of the Swan 350s, they by their nature run more than 100 watts. So you're saying you got to tune them back. You can't take any of their virtual type rigs out with you. Now I realize you're probably not going to carry a DX100, which weighs about 85 pounds, or a Viking Valiant out there, but you might want to take a Swan out there, some of these older, or the Drake rigs out there. You know, I have some of these here behind me. So that might be something to consider. Another term I do not like is for grins. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. It is my thing. Some hams will say, life's too short for QRP. Number one, life is not short. Think about when you were in kindergarten. That was a long time ago. Most times when anybody says life is too short, they're trying to do something that they shouldn't do. That's the situation. This happens. This is not certainly confined to ham radio. Uh, Sometimes some people will justify adultery for that. Life is too short to stay with this one woman. Uh, but QRP, if that's your interest and it happens to be one of my interests, that's fine. I like going to the beach with low power. I really don't want to drag out an ICOM 7610, which is what I have now. I'm waiting for the K4. Another term hams will say, I'm going to bite the bullet and spend this amount of money on a rig. Number one, spending money is no effort. Studying for an exam and passing it, that requires some effort. Buying the book for the exam, that requires some effort. Studying for the exam and passing it doesn't. But biting the bullet, big deal. Okay, big deal. Another term I can't stand, but it's a personal thing. Is resemble that remark. And speaking of personal thing, a lot of hams will start off either their verbal commentary or written commentary by saying, personally. What is the purpose of that word, personally? Aren't all comments that you make personal? Another thing that they will say, hams will say, and many others, they'll say, to tell you the truth, or let me be honest with you. So they're lying when they don't say that, and that certainly goes through the rest of the population. Speaking of equipment, they'll say, I'm going to pull the trigger. What trigger? Is there a trigger somewhere? Like I said about biting the bullet, those two terms kind of go together. And then hams like to put people down, or put companies down. I'll see this a lot when they're talking about eBay. Instead of saying eBay, they will call it Fleabay. Now, eBay is a very successful company, and they make a lot of money. And maybe I feel they charge too much, but I'm not going to insult them like that, calling them a Fleabay, because they even charge a commission on the shipping. But probably the reason they do that is some people would sell something that's worth $100 and sell it for $10 and charge $110 for shipping, so they wouldn't have to pay the what am I looking for? They wouldn't have to pay the commission. Another thing, hams, when they write ham, they will capitalize it, H-A-M. Or if they put H period, A period, M period. I know a lot of hams do not like that. They are very much against that. This is a big one. The hams will say, I'm going to invest in a particular piece of ham equipment. So say they're investing in an ICOM 705. You don't make money on an ICOM 705. That's investing. I invested in Apple. I bought Apple stock for split adjusted $15 a share. It's now trading at about $170 a share. So I've made a lot of money on that. The 6,000 turned into over 100,000. That's investing. When I buy a ham radio rig, except for the KX3, I did sell a KX3 for more than I paid for it. But you're not generally going to sell a ham rig for more than you pay for it. So you're not investing. They use that term to make it sound better than it is. Selling. They will post on there, there's no way to tell if it works. Plug an antenna into it. You don't have an antenna? Stick a wire. Any wire to at least see if the receiver works. You don't know if the transmitter works. Do you have a light bulb? Stick a light bulb on the end. You're not going to get a perfect match, but at least you can see if it puts out. So what they mean when they say no way to tell if it works, it doesn't work. Because they could tell if it works. They're hams. They should be able to tell if it works at all. Another term, and I saw the owner of QRZ comment on this. What someone pays has nothing to do with what it's worth. I might pay $500 for a piece of ham equipment, but it may only be worth $100. Or for example, the IBM AT. I may have paid $900 for that in the day. It's worth $50, $20 maybe now. So what you paid for it has nothing to do with it. On ham radio videos, a lot of hams, they'll do a video and they will just show a picture of the rig working. They won't narrate it. They won't say what's happening. They open your mouth and say something on it. Another term hams like to use is, I'm not going to take returns due to part swappers. Hams have a habit of doing something because they saw somebody else do it. The term QSL, hi, those terms kind of fit in there. So part swappers, I don't know of anybody that swapped parts, but I'm sure there are some. No returns due to part swappers. So just say no returns. And then you will see sometimes someone post something for sale and they'll say it's rare. Number one, if it's rare, the buyer's going to know it already. There's no you're not helping selling it. When you say rare, you're actually thinking you might. When you say rare, you're kind of trying to fool the buyer. So this famous ham that is very well known. He sells a lot of the books that hams use to study to pass their amateur exams. I heard him on the air once, and he was talking to a fellow, and the fellow was mentioning that he had cancer and didn't have very long to live, sadly. And he turned it over to this guy, the well-known ham, and the guy just talked only about himself, did not react. And then after he finished talking about himself, instead of saying, you know, hope you feel better, or hope, get commiserating with him a little bit, he turned it over to him and said, well, what else would you like to know about me? So I do have some, we all tend to be very concerned about self. I happen to be a teacher. I teach 4th and 5th grade. I love the children. And I do talk about ham radio with them. And but I never say anything negative about ham radio to children. I let them make their own decisions. And I love doing Morse code with them. So I will say, I might say to a kid, what's your name? And he'll say his name is Scott. And I'll say, I'll give you your name in Morse code. I'll go da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then we do that with a number of the kids in the class. And they get very excited. They want to hear their name in Morse code. And this I tell them to pick out some characters. And then a lot of times I'll offer them as a reward a QSL card. And because I don't, I get the XQSL cards and I like them, but after the first 1,000, you kind of get used. You kind of really don't need them anymore. So I will give away some of the cards. One little girl started to cry when she got it because it happened to be from her hometown in Brazil, and where her grandmother had just passed away, and she was so thankful to have the card. So a lot of you may talk about what you do for ham radio, or that you might do something. I do something. I'm out in there. I will teach them about phonetics. So I will give them ask them their name. So if I might have a little girl whose name is Karen, Kilo Alpha Romeo Echo November, and I have kids going on in school saying to each other, "Hi, my name's Kilo Alpha Romeo Echo November. My name is Frank Romeo Echo Delta." So this is something that kids will learn. I also talk to them about 24-hour time. But I don't put down ham radio. Now, as we're going to conclude here, you can hear the RIDI in the background, and I can read RIDI by ear. And that fellow just there, that he was on there now, he just gave out a good signal report, and what number? I think it was number 1,262 in this contest this RIDI contest that they're doing. So I also learned to copy FT8 by ear. That's a little bit tougher. Because it's tougher because you got to pick up the signal reports. CW I'm not so good at though. CW I'm not so good at. So I hope you might want to have some questions. I will tell you that in some of my past postings on commentary on ham radio, hams have I have made the comment, if there's anything in here I have said that is not based on the truth, let me know. And since the first commentary I posted in 2008, not one ham has said what you said was not based on the truth, So I hope more than one person is watching this and has questions, and I hope there's more than one person. But I have to compliment Eric Kuth for including me in here, because he knows I'm not a popular guy in some circles. and I know he's really concerned about everything being being very positive, and I have a lot of positive things to say about Hams. They certainly do have good character. So Eric, 4Z1UG, thank you for doing the virtual Ham Expo. Must be an awful lot of work. I hope it is worth it for you. So we'll be open for questions if anybody has them.